I will now tell you how wide the gap between right and left is. Have you ever been to the Grand Canyon? Welcome to the Masters Program. I'm Dennis Prager. This is part 2. There's so much to say, it's in 2 parts. Differences between right and left. I want to repeat what I said at the beginning of part 1. Not every conservative holds every conservative position. Not everyone on the left holds every left-wing position I am about to describe. I understand that. But it applies to the great majority of people. And one more very important opening point. Liberals do not hold most of the left-wing positions that I am delineating here in this series of differences. Liberals mostly hold the values or positions that I actually describe as conservative. They vote left, but they think conservative. This is not to convince anybody to vote left or right. That is not the purpose at all. My purpose is to make clear what is not clear to people, because you so often hear, oh, that which unites us is so much greater than that which divides us, which just isn't true. And it certainly isn't true today in America. It might have been true 100 years ago, but it is not true today. And that is why this is so important. The place of God and religion in society. The left-wing view is that these should both be entirely private matters. It's fine if you believe in some religion and practice it and take its values, but it has no place in the public sphere. So they want both a secular government and secular society. The right wing, or the conservative, wants a secular government and a religious society. So they agree on government, but they don't agree on society. The general belief is, as George Washington put it in his farewell address, that which society's values rely upon is religion. And if it weren't for religion, and he meant basically biblical religion, what we would call Judeo-Christian values, and that is the basis of what George Washington believed would be the basis of a moral society. That is the conservative position, and it always has been. One proof I have is that there are 3 mottos in America. I call it the American Trinity. They're on every coin. And they are liberty, e pluribus unum, from many one, and in God we trust. That's a big deal. In God we trust is a motto of the United States of America and has been for much of its history. As I pointed out in part 1 from the Declaration of Independence of the United States, we are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights. Not every founder of the United States was a believing Christian. Not all believed in the Christian Trinity. That is true. But they all believed in the Supreme Being, the Creator, or God. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, 2 of the least traditionally Christian leaders of the founding of America, they actually designed a great seal of the United States. And the design was the Hebrews, the Israelites, the Jews leaving Egypt. That is how Bible-centered Jefferson and Franklin were. The Liberty Bell has a verse from the Bible, from the Old Testament. Yale University's insignia is in Hebrew. The role of the Bible in American life has no peer. It was the central text. It was how you taught children values. Love your neighbor as yourself. Pretty central. That comes from the Bible. So that's a huge difference. The importance, the indispensable significance of God and religion, and the desire to get rid of at least religion on the part of many on the left. The worth of the human fetus. This is probably the most controversial. I will try to be as uncontroversial in my presentation as possible. I am not talking about law. I am talking about the worth of the human fetus. I'm not talking about pro-choice or pro-life or should abortion be legal. I am merely talking about the view of that creature known as the human fetus or the unborn baby, whatever term you wish to use, on the left and on the right. They have extremely different views of it. On the left, that creature, the human fetus, has no intrinsic worth. The mother determines 100% whether it is infinitely precious or worth nothing.
As far as slavery, women who have unwanted pregnancies and aren't allowed to make those decisions are somewhat enslaved themselves to birth fetuses that they did not want, for whatever reason.
While the baby's inside of your body, you have the right to decide what to do with it because it resides in your body, because it is a part of you, because it is not yet its own autonomous thing.
By forcing women to share their bodies with fetuses to keep them alive, you are actually suggesting that fetuses should have more rights than any other person in the world.
And by the way, I've often thought about this. If a pregnant woman, the mother, wants to give birth to that baby, and a criminal comes along, shoots her during a holdup, and kills the baby, he is in fact prosecuted for homicide, the murder of a human being. That means that if she wants the baby is fully human. If she doesn't want the baby isn't worth a pretzel. I'm not being cute. It isn't worth a pretzel. It's like a growth, a pimple. You don't have to believe in God. I'm not even referring to God or religion here to understand that just doesn't make moral sense. If she wants it, then it's murder if it's killed. If she doesn't want it, then it's nothing if it's killed. But that is the left-wing position. The worth of the unborn human is completely created by the mother. The right-wing position is that at some point, this creature, whether it is at conception, heartbeat, or at viability, is a human being, is a full human being. The mother, therefore, cannot be the one who determines its worth. American exceptionalism. The left position is that the very term is chauvinism. It is unhealthy, at the very least, bragging. And the right-wing position is that it is an historical reality, that America has been exceptional. As noted in Part 1, the French made the Statue of Liberty, but they gave it to the United States of America, because this was, as one American famous song puts it, sweet land of liberty. This is the United States historically. It has been exceptional with regard specifically to liberty. This was the land that people came to to strike it out on their own, to fail or to succeed, but to do it on their own, unencumbered by the society. And many did succeed, as is well known. American exceptionalism is not a bragging right. It is either true or not true. The left says it is not true. The right says it has been true. By the way, it is not guaranteed to remain true. Right now, at the time of this video, I hope it changes in the future. I pray it does. But right now, America is not as exceptional as it was. In fact, America is now exporting many bad ideas to the world, which is a first in American history. The greatest threat to the world. On the left, it is the quote-unquote existential threat of global warming, climate change as it is now referred to often. And existential, please remember what existential means. It means the existence of. The existence of the world, of biological life on Earth, certainly human life, is threatened by the increasing temperature on the Earth's surface, in the Earth's oceans, etc. That is the left's position. That is the greatest threat. On the right, the greatest threat is human evil. Again, quite different. Most people on the right, most conservatives, do not deny that the world is getting warmer. They deny that it is worth changing the world and crushing its economies because it's an existential threat. They do believe it is happening, but not an existential threat, and that it is a pipe dream, that the world will be able to power itself on sun and wind alone. In this regard, if the left advocated nuclear power, most conservatives would be on board completely. And nuclear power has no carbon footprint. It is completely what is now called clean energy. And it is a puzzle as to why people do not support nuclear power when that is such an obvious answer if you believe that climate change poses an existential threat to the world. The reason each gives for the Middle East conflict between Israel and its neighbors. The left says it is because Israel is expansionist and builds settlements on the West Bank, the place where Palestinians mostly live, although they actually mostly live in Jordan, but that's another story. But I'm just saying that for accuracy's sake. So they live there, and the view on the left is that is the reason, the primary reason for the Middle East conflict. The conservative says, no, the primary reason for the Middle East conflict is that the vast majority, or if not the vast majority, a great many Muslims want to see Israel destroyed. They do not believe that a Jewish state, even though it is only the size of New Jersey, belongs in the Muslim Middle East. That is Iran's position at the time of this video. And they say constantly, our aim is to annihilate Israel, and it will only take one atom bomb because the place is so small. That is what they say. It is the only country in the world threatened with annihilation, regularly. That is the reason that conservatives believe there is no peace in the Middle East, or a lack of peace in the Middle East. The proof of this, that it's not a matter of Israeli settlements on the West Bank, for example, is that if Israel's neighbors announce tomorrow, we are giving up the struggle against Israel, we are disarming and declaring ourselves pacifists, what would happen? If Israel did the same, if Israel announced tomorrow, we are disarming and we are becoming pacifists, what would then happen? In the first case, there would be peace the next day. In the second case, Israel would be destroyed the next day. If Israel gave up its arms, it would be destroyed. If Israel's enemies gave up their arms, there would be peace. Guns. At least in America, the difference is pretty clear. The left believes that except for police and other maintainers of peace, and like the military, and perhaps some sportsmen for hunting and sport shooting, nobody should have a gun. That is the ideal as the left sees it, and the right sees it as a constitutional right, and that the best way to preserve liberty is for the government to be aware at any time that if it becomes a tyranny, people will resist. That is the reason, in fact, the primary reason why guns are even allowed by the U.S. Constitution. So that people can protect themselves against criminals and protect themselves against tyranny. The first thing every tyrannical regime ever does is take away guns from its citizens. That's just a fact. But for the left, the ideal is, again, a strong government. And if people have guns, that is a problem. By the way, it is a problem. I fully acknowledge it. There's a problem if people have guns, if a lot of people have guns, and it's a problem if no one has guns. I think one can be sophisticated enough to understand that. So the mature individual has to decide which is the greater problem. If you are absolutely certain that people will not have to defend themselves, either against the tyranny or against the criminal, then the position that there should be no guns makes sense. What if you're not sure that people will never have to protect themselves? And anyway, it's academic. There are hundreds of millions of guns in America. Since they can't be confiscated, it wouldn't happen. To the extent that they would be confiscated, all you would have is bad guys with guns, which I don't think either side would want. The next difference, race. On the left, race is intrinsically significant, and on the right, it's intrinsically insignificant. How's that for clarity? Yes. On the right, race blind is an ideal, is the moral ideal. I don't give a damn about your color. It means nothing to me. It's as important to me as the color of your shoes. That is the conservative position. The left-wing position is, it's an extremely important thing about you. Liberals believe what conservatives believe. Liberals believe that race doesn't tell us anything about you. What does it tell us about you? Think about it. If I know that somebody is, let's say, black, do I know any other thing about them? Name one thing I know about the person. You know nothing, correct? Do you know their personality? Do you know their brains? Do you know their kindness? Do you know their ethics? Do you know their passions? You know nothing. You literally know nothing about a person if you know his or her color. So how could it be significant? Racial, ethnic, and gender diversity at universities. For the left, it is essential. For the right, it is far less essential than intellectual or ideological diversity. If everybody on campus is of the same ideological persuasion, but they're all different ethnicities, races, religions, etc., what difference does it make? You're not hearing any different ideas. You're not being challenged, which is a big part of the ideal of a university, is to intellectually challenge you, make you think. So one wants ideological diversity, and one wants ideological non-diversity, but ethnic and racial diversity. The primary problem facing Black Americans. For the left, it is white racism or even white supremacy, systemic racism, as they say constantly, and for the right, it is the breakdown of the Black family. You choose, but at least my job is to tell you what the big differences are. My view, this is my view, is that white racism plays an infinitesimally small role in the life of most Black Americans. It played a big one in the past, no question about it, but it doesn't today. The biggest problem is that about 80% of Black children are born to a mother who is not married to the biological father. And very frequently, the father is not even in the home. Show me a child raised with a father in his life, constantly in his life, even after divorce, but constantly in his life, and one who also has a religious life, and I will show you a person of any color who is very likely to succeed in life. This is a very big difference again. The primary problem facing Black America, is it white racism or is it the breakdown of the family? Next, the purpose of art. For the left, the purpose of art is to challenge the status quo, to break new frontiers. It is to confront the viewer or the listener with something that is new and different. For the right, the purpose of art is to elevate, inspire the viewer, the listener. That is not the case on the left. They sort of laugh at that idea. I mentioned scatological art when I talked about the consequences of secularism. I know I didn't mention this one. You should look this up, actually. It's almost unbelievable. Some artist nailed a banana into a wall at a museum, and it became a pretty popular piece. People would stand next to it for selfies. See, I would have thought that that just sort of like mocks the public. But I think mocking the public is a big part of modern art and modern music. I was at a concert my junior year in England. I was in Leeds, England. So they had a piece, a modern piece of music, which was what's called atonal. I won't bother explaining, except it doesn't follow the tonality of any key. Worse, it was a woman singing solo along with the piano. And it went something like this. I promise I'm not exaggerating. And I knew I was being played with. And here, I was 20 years old. And when it was over, I applauded because I didn't want to insult the singer. But when the composer came out, I booed. And the English are very reticent, and they turned around at me, this young American kid, I don't think they knew I was American, and they gave me this look, and I just looked at them and said, "Did you like it?" The conservative is not in love with the new. If the new is great, the conservative loves it. But new for new's sake, when there is so much great that isn't new, I believe it is our job in every generation to give to the next generation the greatest that previous generations have produced. Keeping with this theme, the greatest English playwright. For the left, there is no such thing. It's all a matter of opinion. I've had this argument on my radio show ever since I began 40 years ago, where people say, who are you to tell me Shakespeare's better than Batman comics? I like Batman comics, you like Macbeth. Who's to say which is better? So there is no such thing as the greatest English playwright. That's why the University of Pennsylvania took down, the English department took down the mural of Shakespeare. He was just a dead white English male. And so they preferred someone who was not white, not European, and not male, and not straight. And they put up a mural of a lesbian, non-white poet. So do we measure art by the artist, or do we measure art solely by the greatness of the art? Another left-right difference. The next difference, cultures. For the left, all cultures are equal. To say that any culture is better than another is to engage in fascism, chauvinism, or even white supremacy if you say that it's a European culture. As the New York Times music critic Anthony Tomasini wrote a few years ago, who are we to say that a Beethoven symphony is any greater than, and then he listed Indonesian folk music. Well, I'll tell you the answer to that with no insult to Indonesian folk music. And that is that in Indonesia, they have a symphony orchestra that plays Beethoven. And they do in Japan, and they do in Korea, and they do everywhere. Because the whole world thinks Beethoven wrote some of the greatest music ever written, as much as they may adore their own music. I'm a Jew, I love Jewish music, but it doesn't compare to Beethoven. And that's just in the artistic realm. What about judging society in the moral realm? Are all societies equally moral in their achievement? Of course not. It's not chauvinism, and it is certainly not racism to say that the West made something better when it comes to human rights, and when it comes to free elections, and when it comes to women's dignity. Yes, the West was better and has been better. That's just a fact. It's not a boast. Not all civilizations are equal. America's founders, to the left, they were white, rich slave owners. To the right, they were some of the greatest men who ever lived in history. They founded the freest country, the greatest experiment in liberty in human history, which is why so many people have wanted to move to America and did. You judge people in the context of their age. You don't judge them by today. And in the context of their age, these were giants. Yes, many of them owned slaves, and all of them thought it was a wrong thing to do, which is to their credit, because most people justify what they do, whereas in the case of the founders, they didn't. They knew what they were doing is wrong, which doesn't make them hypocrites. It makes them intellectually and morally honest sinners. If only all of us would be that honest. The purpose of judges. On the left, it is to pursue social justice and advance social justice, and on the right, it is to advance and pursue justice. Social justice has almost nothing in common with justice, which is why the left has created the term. If social justice meant the same thing as justice, it would be a useless term. Social justice is not justice. Social justice is if two people are in your courtroom, one is poor and one is rich. Social justice says, give the verdict to the poor guy because he needs the money much more than the rich guy. Justice says you give the money to the one who is correct in this case. You pursue justice. It's not the same as social justice. National borders. To the left, it is a relic of the past, the chauvinist past, a racist past, and to the right, it is indispensable for the survival of a nation. We see this battle in the United States. We see this battle in Europe. How sacred are national borders? The difference between right and left on this is the difference between, perhaps, the survival of a country as that country or not. It is one thing to allow a certain number of people in legally to help them out, and even help the country out if it needs more workers, for example. But it's quite another to have essentially open borders. You have a right to protect your home against people coming in who have not been invited, and so does your country. The view of illegal immigrants. On the left, these are simply undocumented migrants. They should be welcomed in vast numbers and should not even be called illegal immigrants. On the right, it is beautiful to have immigration, but it must be legal. That's pretty clear, a difference between left and right. Here's one that'll surprise you: hate. You'd think, oh, if there's one thing left and right would agree on, it's they both hate hate. Well, not true. Berkeley City Council in California many years ago voted that Berkeley would be a no-hate zone. And I said on my radio show, I can no longer visit Berkeley. I hate evil. I hate rape. I hate murder. I hate torture. There's a place for hate. Depends what you hate. Death penalty for murder. On the left, it is always wrong. No matter how many people a murderer has murdered, no matter how many he's tortured, no matter anything he has done, he should not be put to death. And on the right, there is the belief that some people do indeed merit and should be put to death. This is a very large discussion, but this is a difference. It is interesting, a call I once received from a woman, and she said as follows: "You know, Dennis, I've always disagreed with you about capital punishment. But a month ago, my brother was murdered in cold blood, and now I agree with you. I want to see that murderer put to death." So, of course, I extended to her my deep, deep sympathy on the murder of her brother. It's a true trauma to lose a loved one to murder. But I didn't stop there. I said, I have to say, though, your call is troubling. Because, in effect, what you're saying to me is, Dennis, when everybody else's brother was murdered, I was against the death penalty. But now that it's my brother, I really want to see it enacted. And she admitted that's true, to her credit. There is some deep, deep, colossal injustice on planet Earth when you keep every single murderer alive. Not every murderer should be put to death. It has to be premeditated. It has to be beyond a doubt, etc., etc. But some people have lost the right to live. I think that should be obvious. If I take your bicycle, why should I be allowed to keep mine? You have no bicycle and I have one, even though I stole yours? Why is that not true about a life? I take somebody's life, but I can keep mine. Anyway, it's worthy of its own discussion, but at the very least, it is certainly a left-right difference. What should a person's primary identity be? For the left, it is world citizen. For people on the right, their primary identity should be national and or religious. Not world citizen, We're all world citizens by definition, but that is not our primary identity. Our primary identity, if you're American, is American. If you're Belgian, it's Belgian, etc., etc. And religious. For religious people, their religious identity is even greater than their national identity. I am a Christian, I am a Jew, and I am a member of this nation. But for the left, world citizen. Here's a great example. The most famous cartoon character ever is Superman. Superman, just a few years ago, was depicted in the comic strip that he is renouncing his American citizenship. He is now going to become a citizen of the world. Superman was founded by liberals, and then it was taken over by people on the left, or leftists, if you will. The liberals who created Superman, I think it was in the 1930s, loved the United States of America, and they made him a proud American. His motto was truth, justice, and the American way. By the way, that has also been dropped. So he's now a world citizen. The problem is people need other identities. World citizen doesn't mean anything. Isn't there a series of concentric circles that make our identity real? And by the way, a good real, it's a good thing. My family, then my community, then my country, my religion, then the world. Of course you should care about the world. But if that's your only identity, there's something wrong. It sounds nice, but it doesn't mean anything. It just means that you'll want to give a lot of power to world institutions. The international ideal. On the left, it is an international authority imposing its will upon the countries of the world. Whether it's the World Health Organization, or it is the World Economic Forum, or it is the United Nations, it doesn't matter. But it should be an international body, or in Europe, the European Union, on the members of the EU. But the right, by definition, does not trust power. The more power anyone has, the greater the likelihood for misuse. As Lord Acton put it a long time ago, well-known phrase, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You don't want gigantic power in anyone's hands. Whether it's the United Nations or it is the United States government. That is the reason the United States, which was until recently the freest country in the world, was created to give states so much power. The U.S. Senate gives states equal power, even though they have such different populations. In America, the president is not elected by popular vote, but by the vote of each state, because the founders of America did not want to give massive power over to a federal government and not over to even the majority in every instance. It didn't trust people with too much power. And that, therefore, is the fear of conservatives with regard to Brussels, in the EU, and the United Nations around the world. That's a big deal, that difference. And we are going to feel that one more and more acutely, it seems, as time goes on, as people are more and more convinced by the left that a world body is good for them. The nation state is almost a dirty word on the left, but on the right, it is the preservation of a culture, a language, a way of life, and ultimately, hopefully, liberty, which is the animating impulse of the conservative. This is a lot to digest. The bottom line is there are huge differences between left and right. Obviously, there are political implications to this two-part video, but I don't mention the word Democrat or Republican once because it transcends any given political moment. These go to the heart of the human condition, these differences. I hope you'll review this. I hope you'll make a list and see where you come down. You may be surprised. I'm Dennis Prager, and this is the Masters Program.